sometimes, you know. It's hard to explain, you know, 3.5 years of history and what's all happened, and it's hard to explain things that the Lord has done. It's hard to explain with words what it's like to when you're wanting to bring the gospel into areas where Satan has had dominion for so long. I mean, it's just hard to kind of explain that. I was joking with Pastor Josh. I had some practice with this last week. A church asked me to preach and share at the same time for the corporate worship, and I accidentally held the church hostage for like an hour and 20 minutes. So it's good practice. I'm glad we're splitting it up. But I just want to say thank you so much. I have Jessica, Heidi, and William. They're still at the house. Hopefully they'll be here for the 10:30. Heidi woke up, and her eyes were like balloons. So trying to get the swelling down. They were playing at a friend's house, so it's probably allergies. I will say, there's something going on in food in America. Josh, what's up, brother? Yeah, food in America is crazy. There's, something going on. I will say I brought, maybe we could pass them around. It's hard because you want to bring all the goodies to everyone. I do have some candy from Peru. And also, oh, look at these guys coming to serve when I said candy, you know. And I also have prayer cards with all the ministries we got going on. I made bookmarks. Prayer cards because, there you go, if you want to pass those around, brother. Thank you so much. Man, look at these young men. I made prayer cards and bookmarks because if you're like me, I have friends that are on the refrigerator with those prayer cards. And once every year, I actually look up and see them. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a prayer card there. But if it's in a book or a Bible prayer card, I'll pray for it every day. But if it's on my refrigerator, they're being forgotten, unfortunately. So that's from my own weaknesses, the bookmarks. But it's a pleasure to be here. I will try my hardest to give you guys a little bit of an update. So, we're serving right now in Cusco, Peru, the Matthews family. We've been there, it would be around 3.5 years. I always joke that it's in dog years. Because after every crazy, either near-death experience or something crazy traumatic, that adds about 7 years or something per year. But I'm joking. But yes, serving in Cusco, Peru. The little bit about Cusco is that Cusco was the capital of the Incan Empire. So it's a really wonderful, famous city. It's the number 1 tourist destination in South America for Machu Picchu. But the city itself is number 11. So it's a really interesting city where you have the Quechuan people mixed with the Peruvian people. The Quechuan people were just the descendants of the Inca, the more the natives of the land. And then you see about 2 million tourists from all over the world. A lot of Europeans with their fanny packs. It's great. But so if you look behind me in the middle picture, just some interesting. So the left is Machu Picchu, of course. And we took my son William there to get a picture. He was born in Cusco. So he's half Peruvian, half American. Or 100% American, 100% Peruvian, to use Christology analogy. In the middle, if you'll see, look behind us. That's the Plaza de Armas, and that is a Spanish-built church in the background. So one thing that's really cool about Cusco is you have a mixture of the ancient with the European. So you have a lot of the Incan stones that build the city, but then you have a lot of European-style buildings. So it makes for a very beautiful mixture. But behind us with that Spanish church, when the Spaniards came, they did God's work. So they destroyed the temples and murdered people in the name of evangelism, and then built a church on the temple. I'm being sarcastic, sorry. Man, definitely was not doing God. Okay. Very interesting place. Very interesting place. A lot of spiritual darkness. So you have a mixture of the Catholic mixed with the paganism, mixed with the ancient gods. So it's a very dark place. You just feel it. So there are shrines everywhere. On every street, there's a shrine. You look out from the roof of our house, and you could see where the Incas would prepare their dead and offer their dead and speak literally to the devil. So it's a very dark city, lots of spiritual warfare. But it's a very interesting country. And I'm going to get into this later because we're working hopefully within the realm of 29, 30 languages within the next year. But that's not to say there are more languages than that in Peru. So you have the people of the jungle, which is very diverse languages. Then you have the descendants of the Incas, which speak Quechua. And then you have just kind of like what happened here in America. You have the Spaniards and the native mix, right? And so you have just a very diverse culture, peoples. But Cusco is highly Quechua. It's more of a native feel. Very wonderful environment. And that's out in the countryside on the far right. Very beautiful place. So the primary work that I went there to do is to help with the Seminario Bíblico, Los Chasquis del Evangelio. So the Chasquis of the Gospel. It's a small seminary founded a handful of years ago, and I'll show you in a second the founders. But the Chasquis were the messengers of the Incan Empire, and they delivered messages by foot. And it's really cool to still see the ancient stones where they would take breaks and rehydrate and pass messages along. And it is said, don't quote me, I don't have my books around me, but it is said that they could deliver messages even faster than Rome, and they would do it by foot. And so that's their ancestors, and you go on a trip with these mountain men. Whew, they will wear you out. It's hard to keep up. It's pretty impressive. The founders, Noé on the left and his wife Noemi, and Peggy and Ed. And I'm going to be mixing a lot of this stuff in today with the sermon today. But that's Noé and Noemi to the left, and Peggy in the middle, and Ed. So Peggy in the middle, she is originally from Peru, but grew up most of her life in America with her Vietnam vet husband, Ed. They became missionaries. Peggy was 58 when they moved to Peru. Ed was 63. I'm going to talk about that later. Pretty amazing. And so, this morning I'm going to really just kind of be talking about a work of God begins with a burden to see something happen, to see a need, and you go for it, and what it all takes to see it happen. But one of the points is that not everybody lives to see the fruits of their labor. So I'll get into the story later. Well, actually, So Peggy died right when we arrived, and Ed was put on a ventilator with COVID. So I'm going to be sharing that later in the presentation, so I won't go too far there. That's something I talk a lot, so I need a clock in front of me. Okay. So one of the main objectives here, why I'm here, is to help raise money for actual seminary building. These are some of the designs. We want to name it in honor of Ed and Peggy, because they gave their life. Ed is still alive, but he is fading in Florida, and his health is getting worse. But we do want to name it in honor of them. So with the nature of the seminary and a little bit just of contextualization here, in Peru, it's a very, it's a third world country, and so there's a lot of poverty, and people work to survive, not to thrive. So you have 7 days a week. That's been one of the biggest culture shocks for us is, we didn't go to Peru with an American team of missionaries. We went saying our team is the Peruvian brothers that are the Peruvian church that is inviting us to serve with them. But one thing that we found that was very different with just by necessity from the Peruvian churches and the American churches is just a lack of knowing each other, deep community, fellowship. And it's not just because people don't want to, it's because they can't. I mean, taxi drivers in Cusco work 7 days a week from sun up to sundown. A lot of these people are farmers, and so it's just a lot. There are so many obstacles. When you really kind of get into the weeds of missions, there's a reason why places need the gospel, and it's not just because people haven't heard or that there's not people working amongst them. There's so many obstacles at play when you're wanting to do work. So one of them is a lack of a place to study. So that's how we have land, and so here in hopes to raise funds to be able to build and supply that need, because one of the things that's more conducive and the norm in South America is in a seminary context is people are more accustomed to going and staying at a place for a weekend, a week, a month, and just hitting it hard and studying hard rather than just, okay, three hours a week, we're going to come on a Wednesday night because life is just different. You could even step a foot back and even just look like the daily necessities of life are different. One thing that has been very helpful for my family as Americans who like to eat is how food even is, there's nothing instant. There's nothing right at your hands, just a quick meal. There's microwaves really aren't even a thing in your average Peruvian home. There's no instant anything, and so it takes long to prepare. It takes long, right? So having somebody come after work, at 6 o'clock to do a quick study, they have to sit there and cook and do this whole meal thing and there's multiple generational homes, right? So you have a large family usually. So, there are things, and that takes time. And so you start a virtual class, and it's 9 to 10 o'clock at night. And, and then they have to do it all again, wake up at 4 a.m. and go. And some of the men so I'm going to kind of mixing in what we're doing. Some of the men that we sponsor as missionaries to take the gospel into isolated regions, they come from different theological backgrounds, all evangelical, but different upbringings. Some of them more maybe from the city and are more capable of reading and studying and more fluent lifestyles, whereas some of them are deep in the sticks in the jungle and the mountains. And I like to offer them free classes like scholarships. If they work with us and we sponsor them, I want to give them everything that they need to succeed and do the Lord's work. Part of that is offer scholarships for them, which we do have a sponsorship fund if anybody feels led to help these men. But even offering that, there's two of the brothers that can't even participate virtual because where they live, the internet's terrible. And that's where there's the most need, right? Is where the places where usually that stuff isn't offered. So having a place where people can come and study is a very important thing. If the Lord leads it on your heart this morning, we do have a building fund on our website that everything's tax deductible. So phase one would be $140,000. That would be for dormitories, places where people could come and stay for however long needed, and classrooms and a conference area. So with that basic part, we can move forward. And they say, 6 months, we could build that. And I kind of giggle. I'm like, 6 months. Yeah, and nothing takes 6 months to build, especially in Peru. Anyway, phase two would be a little bit more at $150, and that's for the library, kitchen, stuff like that. And phase three would be missionary housing, professor housing, where the professors could come and stay, maybe a missionary one day or a pastor who could live there full time with his family. And then the phase four is more of just filling it all with all this stuff. So that's what we got going on, and we hope to name it after Ed and Peggy. Here's some of the seminary in action out in more of the Campo churches, which means just the countryside. That was at the early on of our time there. We've really taken a lot of hits. There's been tons of obstacles to our ministry, so we went right in the height of the pandemic. Everything was closed, and then once people started getting sick less, another stranglehold was Peru became like a police state. You didn't have 3 shots, you were not allowed to enter any buildings, and that just closed so many things. And Peru just didn't have the technology to really enforce it, so you had a lot of people. Life wasn't like it could have been, right? And then after all those things get lifted, there's a political revolution, and there was an attempted coup, which was failed, and there was protests and riots on the streets, and so a lot of obstacles just to get things going. But praise the Lord, after 3 years of blood, sweat, tears, and fevers, we launched our bachelor program. So right now we offer levels depending on where people are at. So a lot of people, we have levels for people who don't have any high school education, who can barely read. We have something for them. And then we just kind of all the way up to bachelor's program. And so we saw a need for these youth in the city, the more affluent people in the city, because primarily beforehand we were focused in more of just the country folk, the Quechua context, but there's a huge need in the city where these youth are getting more, they're getting the education, and they have such a desire to know God and serve Him. It's amazing what the Lord is doing, but there was nothing for them. And so we've been working at getting something a little more higher level for them, and we just launched that right when I left. So they're teaching it virtually as we speak. So pray for the new bachelor program. And look at that beautiful design I did on that slide. It's just great. Look at that. So one of the obstacles I'll share later, but I had a great welcoming to Peru about a month and a half into it. I got sick, almost died of COVID. Noe got sick, almost died of COVID. Peggy died of COVID. And Ed was put on a ventilator for 3 months, and that was our welcoming. And my wife was stuck at home with the girls, not knowing anyone. It was just such a crazy experience. And I remember talking with Pastor Josh, and I know many of you are praying. I'm going to get into that more in the sermon. But thank you. It's hard to just get up here and talk. What I really just want to do is just thank you. Is because, and heaven will only be able to tell the results of people's prayers. And I could think about people from this church, and I'm seeing some of your faces, who I would put a need out to be prayed for on Facebook or something. And God would do it. And I would see comments of people from this church praying. And how your prayers not only have lifted our family up and sustained us, but have touched the corners of pockets of Peru where people are forgotten. And I just want to say thank you. And it's really hard to articulate that, of just really how much your prayers have ministered to my family and to the people. I mean, one thing I'm going to share is I'm getting ahead of myself, but I remember praying for some of these mountain brothers, the descendants of the Incas in Nacionqueros, which I'll talk about later. Having these people in my home, and one man saying, can you help me out and just get school clothes from my family or whatever? Haven't been able to work. I've been really sick for months, and I don't know what's going on. So I take him to the doctor, and he'd never been to a doctor and stuff, and I found out that him and his family they only eat potatoes for the last 6 months, 3 times a day. And what I took him to the doctor and just found out he had parasites. And me being the parasite expert that I was from being sick with them, we just took him to the doctor, got the meds, got all the tests he needs, and he's doing better. But I remember just being a loss for words, okay, how do you help these people long term? I mean, the gentleman I'm talking about, because of their lack of nutrition, he's up to about here on me. And it's just sad in being a father, and you just think about children growing up, and that's all they're eating and stuff. So I remember asking you guys to pray, put it on my ministry page and Facebook, and if you have a Facebook and you don't get our ministry updates or prayer requests, really, I would love to give you the info to join. But I remember a handful of you guys were the only ones that commented, praying. And the next night, I was wanting to get to know my neighbor. He's from Texas, wears a big old cowboy hat and cowboy boots every day, and his name is Cody, and he lives right by me. I always joke and say I'm the second coolest Cody on my road. And his wife is from Cusco. She's Cusqueña, and so the next day we get up together, and he's like, so one of the things I do is I build high altitude greenhouses to be able to provide nutritious foods for people, and he's like, that's crazy. And I was telling him about how I just literally had these people from the community in my house the day before and was thinking about what I could do to help them. He's like, man, it's been a dream of mine to be able to build one of these in Keros. And so it was just like an instant result. And so, I'm here. Hopefully my friend is helping raise funds with that with his connections. So we're hopefully going to be building a greenhouse, if you want to know more about that, because it will be more as a pilot. So if it works good in one community where there are more believers and they're more industrious, we'll do that. And that's per the Quechuan men who know these communities well. So we're going to try it out with one, and if it works out good, we'll try to build them. In each Keros community, there are 5. And this is the Keros community. And so they're the descendants of the Incas. And they live very isolated lives. But over the last decade or so, they've become more and more like open to outsiders. And when I say outsiders, I even mean just Spanish-speaking Peruvians. So they're considered their own nation, their own people, right? I mean, within the nation of Peru. But when you really get into people groups, it's a whole separate people group, right? And it was, on the left is a picture, and I'm going to probably say this a lot, but it was a very life-changing picture for me and moment. And I've had a lot of those, which really I just want to share this morning in hopes to fire you guys up to pray, to see the Lord do more on this earth. Because if I could say what's one thing that has changed my life, it's to see the power of prayer. And why am I here this morning? I don't like talking about myself. I want to share with people the results of their, because when you give and when you pray, you're sharing in this, right? If I could do anything, though, it's to fire the church up at home to pray. Just show them how the Lord has done things. So I did not go to Peru thinking about any type of, I've been to Peru before, and I've seen the communities, the isolated communities, and it always just touched my heart, like, we got to do something about this, right? But the main focus was to go and help with the seminary. So after COVID, after all that, there was a big breakthrough. So after every major trial season, there's always been a breakthrough of a new door. And the first one was Keros. And we were going to go wanting to minister in these communities because Noe, his daughter is a doctor, and she always spoke about these people in the mountains who just come to the hospital to die when they're very old. And so Noe already knew about them, and so we'd been praying, right? And we were all packed up and ready to go to a community, but we got a call and was like, hey, don't go to this one. They're all out in the fields working, and so they're not going to be in their homes in their little village, right? So we're like, okay, well, hey, we're all packed up. Let's just go. So we just went by faith with a couple of brothers who knew that place very well, and we went, and man, it was my first time. I'd been in isolated places, but this was by far the most, 6-7 hours in the mountain roads and just nothing but curbs and, death-defying cliffs and, just insane and it starts to get dark and you really can't see that much in front of you and you're just like, God, help us. And just oftentimes I'm just like, where am I? What is going on? Where's my mom? Where's Burger King? Where's all this stuff? And I'm looking at Noe, please don't die. Like if you die, I'm going to die out here lost. Please tell me how to get home. So we arrive and these men were working on the outside at night, which was very rare. People don't do construction at night, but we pulled up and we're like, hey, we're just here looking for a place to stay. We're wanting to, work. We're missionaries wanting to work in these communities. And these 2 men were like, hey, come with us, right? And so we go into their house and they just start bawling and saying how they had been praying for help, wanting help, and but we're the only 2 believers in their community, and we're getting very discouraged. And then they took us out the next day to show us this plot of land where there's the square. And I have even videos of the men doing this. It was just awesome. And the man kind of to his knees on the left, his name is Pablo, and he's from there. And They showed us this plot of land where they tried to build a church building, but before COVID came, and that was just kind of the last punch in the face, right? They were already discouraged, and so they just kind of gave up. And so that was us praying, and the man in the blue jacket is a dear beloved man, Julio, and the man to the left of him is Nicanor, our dear pastor, missionaries, really great heart for their people. But on the far left is a man who's in his 80s, and it's Noe's father-in-law. And after praying, he stood up and just said to those men, I was just like you when I was a kid or when I was a young man. And I would say, Lord, do you not care for my community? Why do the missionaries always go to other places but mine? But he was saying, but now, he would say, there's missionaries from this country, because they prayed. And the Lord brought them. And he's like, this is what God has done to you. And it was very powerful to see that. And this picture to the right is a year later. God heard the prayers, and through churches in Pensacola and some friends, we were able to build a church. And that really just kind of exploded the doors for us for a whole new area of work. So at that point, we just saw this need to be able to send missionaries, train people, and send them to these isolated communities because, the goal is to have, there are incredible men whom this world is not worthy of, and they are working in these places, and we see the need of we need to give these men everything that they need to be able to do God's work. We need to invest in them spiritually, but also give them the resources they need to be able to do this. Because their churches back home, they don't know how to, the gospel is very new in Peru. So they don't do this. They don't have missionaries come and speak. They don't, the pastors can barely be supported. They work full time. Lots of obstacles to face when you want to really mature a place, right? There's a reason it is the way it is, and it's not easy. So we saw a need to start sending missionaries, men from communities like this who speak the language and who are tough as nails and have the heart to do it. Because it gets really cold, it's really hard. It's really hard for outsiders, not from those climates, to do this. And there's been multiple times in my experience, whether it's the jungles or the mountains, where I'm seeing that there are great people who can do this, and we need to pour into them. And so that opened the door to be able to send missionaries, seeing the need, to be able to send and support guys to go. So right now we're supporting Nicanor and Julio. Nicanor, so this also opened the opportunity to teach seminary classes within there are 5 communities in Nacionqueros, and they have been reached. There are people scattered abroad that still worship the earth and the god of the Incas and want nothing to do with it. But there has been some knowledge of God, and so they want to learn, and so we developed curriculum for them, had it translated into Quechua, so that opened up a whole translation thing. Do I have that going on? Not yet. And then we were just asked about a year ago. Everything moves very slow. So we were asked about a year ago from them saying, hey, the sisters in the churches, they want to study, but they can't read. Can you put these lessons that y'all made, can you put them on an audio device? So that's what we're doing right now. And the brothers are doing right now is we're working with putting them on solar-powered devices that somebody just reading it. And that's a big need. And we're doing it in Spanish as the template because everybody speaks Spanish for the most part. And if we go into other communities where there's other languages, we could use the same material, do the same stuff, and just reproduce it, right? That's the goal. And so then came this audio teaching, developing curriculum, translation work. And one of the courses was that we have 4. One of them is, the first one we did was from Chapel Library here in Pensacola. We translated Spurgeon's Catechism in Quechua. And so that's the first one we did. It might be the only catechism in Quechua, I don't know. Theology of the Family. I had the privilege of making that one. And another brother did one on the church, and another one on evangelism, and the church more, and a little bit of mission. But this year we're wanting to make more. So yeah, there's been a great hunger, and so another thing, my main job is to champion people in their work. And so we need help supporting these men who are either going to minister, deliver audio Bibles, or teach classes. I had one donor committed to doing that, but he's had some problems financially over the last couple months. So, yeah, if the Lord puts it on your heart, so we don't have like a certain set thing. We try to give 200 here, 200 there, 100 here. You know, a lot of these men live off the land, and their lifestyle is very different. They don't have tons of bills like we do. It's mainly just to pay for their gas, food, and a little bit more. And so Julio, for instance, he uses his donation so that, because he lives off the land, but he wants to give his children what he did not have, right? And so he pays for them to go to private school and get a little bit better of education. It's not a lot, $200. But it's enough. And so if the Lord touches your heart, another one, and the guy in the middle, pray for the church plant in Tandanya. That's that community, and that's the picture of it on the left. And that's Seferino, who we're trying to send every month. What time is it? Okay, I'll hurry it up. So what time do I need to stop by? 5 minutes? Okay. That's hard for me. Okay, yeah. So we're supporting pastors, professors to go to these places. And I will say the work has been very hard. Pray for this work, because you want to hear about the prayer and all this stuff coming. But one of the men became a drunk and abandoned the faith. And Pablo, the guy I was mentioning, it's such a knucklehead sometimes, and just causes so much drama and politics, and he's basically kind of abandoned the work and creates a lot of lies and drama. So it's hard. Then you got to find somebody who can willing to go to such a hard community, and we did, praise God. And I hate that he has to go by himself, because I feel like that's not a good biblical principle, because it's very far away, and it's hard, and it's cold, and just having somebody there. So pray for the work in Tandanya, and if God puts it on your heart to help some of these men, I have a fund that could either sponsor their education. Seferino wants to study but can't. He lives high in the mountains. He doesn't get good signal. Pray for that. And yeah, if God puts it on your heart, but for sure pray for Tandanya. And that's the guy on the right he's kind of like the mayor of Queros. And we had one audio Bible when we first went. We got to give him one, and he's a shaman, which is a male witch. So it was really awesome. That's him playing his guitar. Yeah, and that was just that. In the middle is my girls, and on the property that we own for the seminary, the Queros people, they're Christians. They came, and because we'd love to be able to host people like them, right? To be able to stay, groups of people could come study. On the left and the right is one of the elders of the village. He was at one point the leader, one point the judge, and he was a shaman, a male witch, but he was one day, decades ago, listening to an audio Bible that somebody had gave him, and he read the part in Revelation where it says, liars and those who practice witchcraft will have their part in the lake of fire. And he became a Christian. So on the right is him in my house, and then on the far left was me at his house, which was really awesome experience. And they hooked me up with all their those are gifts at my house, and the poncho and stuff. And when Will was born, they brought him a little hat and a poncho too, and it's really awesome. They always joke and say he's the future leader of Nación Queros. Yeah, okay. So yeah, more pictures in Queros, them at my house, and the houses there. Some of the people, translation work, recording. Pray for the professors and the missionaries, because they do a lot of other stuff outside of Queros too. So really great men. Another huge thing that God has opened up, which actually honestly gets me more excited than it all, and is God has opened this opportunity to be able to mobilize the church. I got connected through, I'll talk about it later in the sermon, but it's a ministry called Faith Comes by Hearing, and they have a goal with Wycliffe to make sure that every language in the world by 2025, 2030, something very soon, has at least an audio copy of the New Testament in their language. And it's crazy how it all happened. I got to meet with I have a meeting with the president of the organization, and he's been to Cusco. And he said, if you guys can provide the warriors, the laborers, we will continue to provide these tools for you guys until every isolated village has the Word of God. And it has been just such an honor and a privilege. Just God has just given, it's created a great problem for that ministry because Peru was not a major distributor. They would only send a couple thousand every year. But now they're praying about sending a lot more, 30, 40,000 a year, and giving somebody in Peru the ability to put all the languages needed onto it and to send it from there. So I'm going to talk about this more in the sermon, but there's some just pictures, people whether they're in the jungle or the mountains. And I have a hunch. I'm no prophet. There's no way anybody can ever know this, but I believe in the world today, what is most needed is not so much people who will go and reach whole nations, new nations. Yes, there has to be that. There is that. But I think that there are forgotten, isolated people. Just like in Peru, there are villages in Africa that are just forgotten, hard to get to. But just like Peru, there are men in Africa, there are men in India, there are men who are like these amazing Peruvian men who will hike jungle and mountain, and nobody will ever hear their name, who will go and have the ability to go. And we need to put the tools in their hands. We need to mobilize them, unleash them, get teams together to go more and more further out. That's my prayers, that God would please pray for this audio, for the forgotten people. On the far left is a woman. I got to, right before I left, I was preaching at that church in the middle. A lot of you guys were praying for this. It's pretty amazing. You guys prayed for this. And I saw a woman. She was 60 years old. She was blind, and she was being led in by her 90-year-old mom. And you just never stop being a parent, I guess, right? And that just, but out in the countryside. And the church wanted me to, they always bring me there to, yeah, I got you, brother, thank you. So there are forgotten people just like them. There are good, godly people that we need to invest in theologically, that we need to teach their churches how to do mission and support each other, because that's the ultimate goal. And we need to put what they need in their hands to see them do God's work, because they'll be able to go where we cannot and do it better than us. And so if you'll pray with me, so pray for God to provide for these men. Thank you for supporting our family. We're supported by churches and individuals. So thank you for supporting us, for those who give to us financially. Thank you for those who pray for us regularly. Please pray for the seminary that we could raise up strong teachers, and for all the forgotten and isolated villages to have the gospel. Amen? Thank you so much. All righty, so do we need Pastor Josh? I'll pray us out. I'll pray us out and pray us back in. All right, Lord, we just thank you so much for this time. Thank you for this church, Lord. Father, it gives my soul joy that churches like this exist, and I truly believe are what's keeping this nation afloat. I pray for people to remain faithful, and I pray for prayer warriors to be risen up this morning. Bless our service. Work in our hearts. Prepare our hearts to worship you, Lord. Maybe we're stressed or whatever we got going on, or we need our minds and hearts to be focused on you. And Lord, help us to hear from you.